Yeah, thanks a lot. So it's a bit different, I think, from the other presentations, but of course in the same area of interest. 500 million years of evolution in 1 week. That is a statement. That was one of the publications which drew at least my attention. And that was actually a work where a fluorescent protein was found, and it was equivalent to 500 million years, it says, in 1 week. Okay, so reading that, obviously, you have to think about yourself and also about the business model you're subjected to. What would that mean in consulting if you do the strategic work, which you do in consulting and other science-based areas, maybe in an afternoon only? So that is what I want to talk about. What are the implications of AI for science-based consulting, market research, technology development and evaluation, and all those topics? So AI is obviously the new disruptor. But now allow me to question that. Is it really that new? A little bit of a personal anecdote. Don't want to sound as a very old man, but I started to study in 1992. One of the first presentations I saw there was actually a very interesting thing. People used olive oils. They analyzed olive oils from Italy and put them into mass spectroscopy and some other analytical tools, and then put it into a neural network of, at that time, only 60 or 70. And what came out was a map of Italy. So nobody knew where this information was hidden, but somehow in the data was obviously some geographic information in it. That was 1992. This book is from 1993. Another thing, as mentioned, I was working with BSF. You've heard this term already. It's design of experiment or combinatoric. That was also a hype in the 2010s, I dare to say. Actually, the logic behind that is actually back to the 1920s, this design of experiment and the statistical merits. So, is it really that new? Some of the principles are very old, but of course it is new. And you've heard a lot today, and I don't want to make that small. This is definitely a step change which we are subjected to right now. There's hundreds of examples, and this is already a brief sneak preview. You find some of the flyers here around. We are also organizing a conference only on AI in materials next March. So for those of you who feel that they could contribute, please still put your abstracts to us. For the others who want to learn, I think we all learn a lot. And until then, the world will look different. But here are some of the examples. So like DeepMind, for example, several millions of crystal structures, and then kind of pre-modeling so that there's only a few which might be stable left. Or, I don't go through all of those, Duke University together with MIT, looking how can they toughen polymers and can predict polymer predictions. Covestro, we've heard already, very extreme good example today. Evonik IBM, another example, which looks into toughening of coating ingredients. One of the pioneers, I would say, because they started already 2018 around or 17. And also we heard something already today about recycling. I think that is an area which is of super interest. So there is a lot of that, and I don't go into detail of those. So we see already that in the level of using it, there's a lot of AI involved. So yes, it's fair to say it's a new disruptor. But now again, what does it mean actually for the other surrounding industries like ours? It will influence everything in the economy. It will influence all the industries. So also the science-based. And it will, and we've seen that also with the presentation of Hansa, it will increase efficiency in research and analysis and advisory services dramatically. And it's very clear you have to check if your business model is still working. So this is actually what you have to check nowadays every day, every morning, if your business model is still working, if you're in these fields. Be aware of some traps. I came across an example from just a few weeks ago, The Guardian, Australia. So Albanese, the Prime Minister, actually was asking back money from Deloitte, who was actually engaged to check social system issue. And well, they had to admit that they have been using artificial intelligence in the report, and that they need to pay back the money. I do believe that the money is not the real issue for Deloitte, but the bigger issue is actually the statements of the labor minister, like Deloitte has a human intelligence problem, or anyone looking to contract these firms should really ask themselves who's working for them, and also maybe rather pay for ChatGPT subscription than buying that. So that is, of course, obviously extremely damaging for consultancy in the broader sense, and you have to be careful to do that. Okay, beside this kind of, a bit obvious mistakes you should not let happen, there's of course fundamental issues, and some of them have been addressed already. And one is, and it's really important also to see and look a bit into the future. I've kind of called it the loss of domain expertise. So now, and again, I don't want to sound as a too old man, but with the ability to judge on chemical topics, I'm able to handle that to a certain degree, or we are. But what happens with the next generation if that was grown up by AI? How much is if you are relying too much on those analyses and then come to probably wrong conclusions? So it can erode the chemical knowledge. That's one thing. The other thing is on data quality. We've heard this multiple times. Obviously, that's very clear, and transparency of use. The more you go into a specified area, the more obviously it is important to have clarity on the data. I can refer to TNO, which is the Dutch Fraunhofer, which also worked on polymers and how to predict polymer properties. And they said, well, we wanted to start right away with our huge database, and then we realized that the data was simply too bad. So we had to spend 3/4 of a year to clean up the mess, and now we can start to work on the actual data. So that's obviously an important thing, but it cannot be overemphasized. And then, of course, we come to points which are, which we know already. So the ethical or other strategic blind spots. So if you are not going into the depth of it, you may not see some of the possible new developments specifically. So new ideas are ugly at birth, I had said at one point. So they are not very concrete, and these ideas probably will be neglected by AI algorithms. So you will rather go to an AI consensus, which is kind of the thing, which is kind of the common, what you said, and you will thereby not get to the point where actually the news is, where the new technologies are, where the new ideas are. That's one thing. The ethical blind spots, I mean, I don't need to touch on that. We've heard all of those examples, which are also potentially quite critical. So it is very important to make your own positioning as a company as well, with regards to the authority on the interpretation. So who is the one which judges finally? The data sources, and of course, how to handle those. I give you now one example, which is knowledge-based industry, so not so much science-based, but I think it's quite illustrative because this is a bit in advance. So I can say that it's a friend of mine. He's a full lawyer, and he has specialized on translating legal documents from German to English and backwards. And this is nothing very simple. So you cannot just translate word by word, but you have to understand what is happening there. You have to understand the legal system. So it's really very sophisticated, and you're also liable. So there's a business risk if you don't work precise and accurate. So, and this is divided in before DeepL and after DeepL, or with DeepL. Before DeepL, he had a bunch of freelancers. So, and if there was, for example, a 400-page document to be translated, he would go out to 10 freelancers who would be working 1 week, and his job would be to coordinate that, because they need to use the same terminology, the same style, and bring this all together. So that would mean 1 week, and he would kind of need to pay out like 4,000 euro of this translation work to these freelancers. Then the year 2018 came, and with this DeepL, which is also already an AI-based tool, And DeepL actually is a German tool from Cologne, so not so far from here. I'm always not sure if I can mention Cologne and Düsseldorf, but I think it's allowed. Here, more or less in a minute, the pre-translation has happened. So that means these 400 pages are there in 10 to 50 minutes. They're translated. And his cost for freelancers has dropped from 100,000 per year to 240 for the license. This is a change which, in more or less 1 second, affected 50% of all translators. He's also a professor, so to say, and he has students which are studying translation. And actually, he says, actually, I should tell them do something else. So that is really crazy in that sense. So, but now this is interesting. So, and this is something important also to have in mind when talking about business models. In the first years, he cashes in the efficiency gain because you don't need to reduce your price to the outside. You just are quicker. You do that in a few minutes, what you do otherwise, or a few days, and if he goes through it, what others do in a week. So that means you can, the margin gain from 100,000 to 240 is quite high, I think. So that's good. That is the efficiency gain he can cash in. But of course, this doesn't last endlessly. And it's just now, according to him, that it's now the current phase is, yeah, probably I'm seeing less and less translation coming to me. That is true, lesser true for these legal parts, which are more sophisticated, but for simple, normal translation, I think the market is already done. So that's an important learning. So this means your business model can really change. But of course, I don't want to talk about the negative only. There's opportunities in it. Again, now coming from a consultancy business, which does very sophisticated science-based consulting, yeah, is a great chance to be very effective. So gaining the market intelligence, detecting trends, again, with the, as I said, with a small bias topic, and technology scouting. We can do that much quicker. Sustainability reporting, very interesting. So we talk about LCAs, life cycle assessments, and here also, I think there will be a portion of that that can be automized at a point. But also here specifically, it will be very important to still look at it because you can really get a lot of stupid results. And also something, I mean, which is, I mean, we're the European Union looking into legal situations with a lot of partially contradicting legislative measures. So getting an overview into that is super complex, and it's also, honestly spoken, at least for me, not the most thrilling exercise to read through directives. This can be automated also to a high degree. So there's a potential to gain a lot of the support. This could mean that the routine work becomes obsolete. And that means, again, so now what do? What can you do that? You have more time, if you like so, to work on the quality of it. So another quality, you can talk about more creative things, on the ethics behind it, and also focus on the judgment of topics rather than on kind of preparing the judgment. And this could lead to the fact that you as a consultant can really support your customers at a different scale, and you can help them to maybe mature your technologies much quicker. 500 million years of evolution in 1 week. So if you think about technologies, the maturity of technologies, and DeepMind talked about 800 years of material development. Maybe there's a chance to have on that. So how does it work together? Try to put this into a small graph like you do, not as sophisticated as Boston Consulting would do it, but still it does a job. So if you talk about who captures the value of this efficiency gain, is it the client or is it the provider? And if you talk about the efficiency gains themselves. So if low, obviously, there is business as usual. If you talk about the client takes all the efficiency gains of AI in, it will also not be a very high efficiency gain because it will be routine. And that would mean then it will be commoditized. And that's a bit of what we've seen with the translation. So normal translation, commoditized efficiency gain will be with the client. On the other hand side, if you're able to keep that efficiency gain in the consulting company, then we would call technology-driven value shift. It means you are cashing in the same stuff, but you keep also the value within yourself. And obviously, it makes a lot of sense to jump over that because it will anyway happen. and go into the collaborative part. So how can you set up your business model in a way that you transparently share with the client that there's a routine work, the efficiency gain is shared, not completely, but to a certain degree. But let's focus jointly together on the more interesting topics. By the way, this is just a kind of off-topic remark, it's also a societal question, who cashes in the efficiency gains of AI? Will it be, again, a few billionaires, which are then super-duper billionaires? Or can society do that a bit different this time? But this is something for later or for a beer this evening. But I think it's a super highly relevant topic to think about who gets these efficiency gains. So we think it is time to also come up with the right values around those. And those values are very much about transparency and openness and fairness. So we should not be a Deloitte. We should not be hiding that. We should say, look, we have been using AI to summarize here because it's just quicker. We have double-checked it. Or in this way. So we need to be transparent to a high degree on what you're doing with AI, and then also make clear where your contribution is. I think that's a very important part, because this allows us to go then to the actual problems. And now allow me for another 5 minutes or so to also talk about other real problems we see, which we are facing also in our consultancy work. For that, I need to describe briefly what Nova is doing. We are working on renewable carbon. We have been introducing that term. And what we mean by that, and that's relevant for this whole case show, and it's really amazing to see that at every booth. It's about, in the end, defossilization of chemistry. You can't decarbonize chemistry because you have chemistry in the materials we are talking about. All of the materials, if they're not metals, are carbon-based. And here we talk about actually how can you replace fossil. You can do that by either bio-based materials or by recycled materials or by CCU materials. That is a topic. And that is relevant. And that is relevant also right now because we have a principally rather depressive mood, I feel, in the chemical industry, specifically in Europe. For the visitors, maybe not so much because the boom areas are elsewhere. We see that on the opposite side here probably, and in Asia, and US, I don't know so far. But let's think about this differently. There's problems to be solved, and there's new problems which are bearing chances. And one of those is, for example, that, and here I've used Europe, but you can talk about actually all the different regions, build certain independence with regard to feedstocks. So changing from fossil to these feedstocks I've been talking about is actually a challenge, but it's also a chance to become strategically autonomous rather than being reliant on other value chains. That's one big topic. Another one is, if we talk about this new chemistry, which has a new building blocks, take methanol as an example, there is new technologies. And this can become a competitive advantage also for Europe. So that's interesting. So I heard again about the Covestro presentation. How much is done there already? That's crazy. How much you can do and how much you can mature technologies quicker. I would dare to say in the polyethylene world, there's not much to gain anymore. So the last 1% of a more efficient polyethylene plant, that's not relevant. But if you talk about biotechnology, there's a lot to be gained. There, if you can identify the enzymes much quicker, if you can run like also Covestro again does and monitor directly the process and make it learn itself and be quicker in running it, there's a lot of things to gain. And this is a much more interesting topic we would like to talk about. And then circular economy. If we talk about this recycling topic, it is in the end, it's about keeping all the materials in the loop and that in your specific region. So it is kind of a completely new business model again. For example, if you think about chemical distribution, which is so far built on a standard model where you have one big plant and it's distributed to the outside. With recycling, you have to redistribute that to a high degree. So that means there's also totally different, talk about solvent cleaning and so on, totally different business models, which can be of interest there and which need to be developed. Yeah. And That's why I'm saying, if we talk about a chemistry of the future, AI is and can be the key to many of those. One is, as I said, the future of oil and gas, as we all know, is anyway not built on oil and gas, the future of chemistry. I'm daring this very strong statement, but if you jump ahead at least to 2050, then even the most conservative assumptions would say there's a huge replacement of fossil into new technologies. So this already had. Which means, and we have very high recycling targets, which means that this waste and the handling of it is the treasure. So as we heard just in the last presentation, so AI will not solve the recycling problem, but it will be contributing. And I think we see something here in the different halls, and automatic detection of waste streams and so on is really something where AI will boost something. We do have an energy transition which is happening. Already today, solar and wind are the cheapest by cost of production, no question. We discussed about the net and everything, but in the end, it's very cheap. Which means also that, in principle, CO2 as a source of carbon is possible, and that again will do something, will change the situations. And as I mentioned already, biotechnology, advanced agriculture, precision farming as a keyword, or novel vegetable oils as a keyword. Here's all areas where you need a lot of data to be precise, more precise, and this also changes business models again. So a company which sold fertilizers or which sold insecticides or so, they can't run with the same business model anymore, because now the precision farming will go into having drones detecting exactly where to go. And then again, where is the value created? It's with the drones rather than with the chemical which is sold. So new business model in this area of digitization, and of course with AI will be boosted. So that means, sorry, one more point. And this is happening now, because what we are seeing is large investment programs. That is true for Europe. We see that in Asia, in the US to a certain degree. Actually, there's a bit of a different dynamics there. Nevertheless, there's a lot of things which are going into investment into these new technologies. So that means the shaping of that is happening right now. And all of that is powered by digitization and by AI. And this reaching of maturity, I think that is a key point where this new technology will help. Which means, again, just to summarize a bit, all of these new topics which are here, which are really huge, and we can discuss if they're all coming in the same manner, but all of those deserve a lot of intelligent thinking. So I welcome AI a lot, because it will help us to get rid of the routine stuff to a large degree and really focus on the real good stuff which is about to happen. So, and if you want to learn more about this and talk about this is the advertisement part of it, that's the Nova Institute. We are a think tank, 50 people, are already in business since 31 years, and we are specialized in this field. We work on everything: technology scouting, communication, sustainability, economy, and policy. And together we can, with this, build strategies which are exactly incorporating this. And our promise is that we will live with the value which I've been talking about, this transparency, and you will not hopefully find anything what Deloitte has been doing. Okay, last on that, we also think that AI will change it so much, as I tried to explain today. And what we actually did is we are now starting a new conference next March, which is specifically on that topic. So how does AI, material science in the broader sense, renewable carbon, how does it come together, and where does it really benefit? And where, as I said, we are welcoming abstracts. We don't want to hear from you that you use ChatGPT to summarize your report. That's not wanted. We want to hear things where there's a step change, which is really helping to mature the technologies and bringing forward the much needed transformation of chemistry. And with this, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the also the engaging speech and the let's say the impulse to connect. So, are there questions from the audience?